Hi friends, and welcome to this webinar for Messy Church USA. My name is Johannah Meyers. I'm the Director of Disciple Formation at Aldersgate United Methodist Church in Greenville, South Carolina, where I help lead an active Messy Church that's been going strong since 2013. I'm also part of the staff for Messy Church USA. I don't know about for y'all, but it's time to start planning Messy Easter. Messy Easter can be one of the more challenging of our messy churches that we do at Aldersgate. And in years past, at least, it has been one of our biggest messy churches in terms of number of people who have attended, particularly new folks that we've never seen before, who may or may not come back. And so that brings an extra set of challenges. So in this webinar, I want to share with you some ideas and tips about planning a perfectly messy Easter session. So here's what we're going to cover in this webinar. We are going to start by looking at basic session planning tips. I'm going to give you some ideas for activities and themes. Let's talk a little bit about celebration time and the things that might trip us up. We can talk about whether or not to have an Easter egg hunt, and I'll give you my 2 cents for what they're worth. And we can talk briefly about publicizing your messy Easter. All of these components are things that we talk about in other webinars. They are things that are important, whether you're planning for Easter or Christmas or just a random messy church in February. They're all important tips for us. But let's think about how basic session planning and things affect Easter in particular. So the basics. For any messy church session, your team is going to sit down and kind of follow these 5 general steps. You want to choose your theme. You want to gather resources and ideas. From those resources and ideas, you want to move on to choosing your activities and then planning your celebration. You want to make sure you're recruiting volunteers, and you want to find creative ways to publicize your messy church. So how do those affect our messy Easter? Let's start by choosing a theme. Now, I know you're thinking, well, if it's messy Easter, then our theme is obviously Easter, right? But have you ever Googled activities for Easter for kids, or activities for Easter for church families, or looked through Pinterest? The reality is that there are so many resources available for the Easter story that it can be complicated to sort through them. We have a wonderful book written by Jane Ledbetter, and this book is published by BRF in the UK, but it's available here in the States just simply for messy Easter ideas. It's a wonderful book, and it's filled with some great sessions. We've got Get Messy magazines, and those go back not just this year, but you can order back copies. So there are a ton of different ideas in there. We've got ideas on Messy Church USA website. You can pull our USA Messy Church Leaders Facebook page, start looking through Pinterest, or just simply start scrolling. And the reality is that you're going to come across so many more activities and ideas than you could possibly do for one messy Easter session. So how do we take all of these endless possibilities and come up with a solid messy Easter session? How do we select those kind of 10, or whatever your magic number is? How do we select the 10 right activities for messy Easter? So, some thoughts on choosing a theme. Refine your approach from all of the Easter story to start thinking about what story you do want to tell. Maybe you want to set your messy Easter up as a Holy Week timeline. If this is the case, then you could set up your space or spaces to almost become a Stations of the Cross type thing where you could walk people through that Holy Week story. If this is the case, then you're looking for specific activities for each piece of the story. So if you need 10 activities, then you need to think about what 1 or 2 activities for Palm Sunday do I do? What 1 or 2 activities do I do for the Last Supper? What 1 or 2 activities do we do to help us wrestle with Jesus's arrest and death? What 1 or 2 or more activities do we want to do to talk about the empty tomb and the good news of Easter? So now you've just kind of helped to refine how you are sorting through all of the activities. When you search Easter activity ideas, you get a lot of spring themes, things like flowers and butterflies, and of course the bunnies. But even that can help you figure out a way that can become your theme. And I'll show you more in a second about that. Even our Easter candy can help us tell the story. One of the things that could help you refine or kind of consider your approach is the timing of your messy Easter. Depending on when Easter falls, either way after a messy church or just before a messy church is scheduled, you may have the opportunity to break the Easter story up into 2 parts and to do a messy church on just the Holy Week stories, and then to follow it up with a messy Easter that focuses on the resurrection and post-resurrection stories. That's one possibility, and it depends on the timing of Easter and the timing of your messy church. For most of us, I would say we end up kind of hovering around right around that Easter Holy Week season, and so trying to kind of figure out how do we share the good news of Easter with people who may not have heard the Holy Week story, and how do we kind of lead all of that up and kind of pull that all together. So consider when your messy church falls. If it is on Palm Sunday, then you've got this great Holy Week opportunity. If it's the Sunday after Easter, then maybe settle in to the Easter and post-Easter approach. So consider some of these things, and these can help you refine your theme and figure out maybe your approach for this particular messy church. Having a specific theme like flowers and butterflies or Easter candy or something like that is another way to help you keep from repeating the same activities year in and year out. For some of you who are just getting started with messy church, you're like, I'm just worried about picking the first ones for this one. But after you've been doing messy church for a little while, you start to think, what did we do last year? And I don't want to do that again. Or when have we done this before? And so having a specific theme kind of helps you figure out which ones we've done, which ones we haven't done, which ones are worth repeating, and maybe which ones we can pass on. So this is another thing to kind of keep in mind. So one example of a theme for a messy Easter. A few years ago at Aldersgate, we did one that focused almost completely around flowers and butterflies. Doesn't really seem very Christian-like until we got into the details of the life cycle of a seed and the life cycle of a butterfly. Through those things, we were able to talk about death and resurrection, dying to self and new life. Really big concepts. But for a lot of our kids, a lot of our families, they have these kind of working knowledge of the life cycle of, say, a seed or the life cycle of a butterfly. And it was a good way for us to kind of talk about Easter. So we did things like decorate flower pots. We bought inexpensive cardboard-ish flower pots that could be actually just planted in the ground. We decorated those. We had a bunch of potting soil, and we gave people the opportunity to plant some flowers. One of our messier activities that we've ever done, but it was super fun. And was a great thing to be able to send home with our messy folks. We created an edible life cycle of a butterfly. I'll show you a picture of that in a minute. One of our games included turning one another into a butterfly or into a chrysalis or into a cocoon using toilet paper. Obviously, this was way before the great 2020 toilet paper shortage when we took our toilet paper for granted. But it was a fun game, kind of wrapping folks up and into cocoons. We had lots of butterfly crafts, and as you see in the picture, we made a flower cross. This is the flowering cross at Easter is an Alder State tradition, usually with live flowers on Easter Sunday morning. But for Messy Easter, we had everyone create a flower. And if you can kind of zoom in and notice, they're actually created out of 4 hearts that have been brought together to create one flower. And we used the cross that we use for our traditional Easter service for the flowering cross. We just took off the chicken wire that holds the live flowers on it. But it created a really beautiful cross. And we actually took it down off of this one and hung it up so that it was still up for our Easter celebration a week later. Just a really great and beautiful, kind of impactful idea. That was also incredibly simple. It's construction paper, a little bit of glue, some scissors and some markers. So simple, easy, lightweight, always a good thing. Here's some close-ups of the butterfly crafts, or one of the butterfly crafts we made. We made them using sponges and pipe cleaners with a little bit of paint, always fun. We had a volunteer who took the butterflies that were made and kind of cut them out, and we kept them. We used them to create a really beautiful Easter bulletin board, and the butterflies turned out really, really pretty. There's a picture of our edible butterfly life cycle. We used marshmallows as the little babies, gummy worms, grapes, and these butterfly crackers. I will say I had a hard time finding these butterfly crackers. I found them online. I was able to get them in time. But just an FYI, if you are looking at that thinking, oh, that looks good, start with those crackers ahead of time and make sure you can find them. But of course, you can always use cookie cutters or other ways to kind of create that or recreate that edible life cycle. Here's a fun little game. We made caterpillars and had little caterpillar races. So you can see one of our table hosts and one of our kids kind of practicing with that caterpillar race. So also a lot of fun with that. Another idea, and this one we can actually give you a head start on, and that's the Candyland idea. The idea behind this particular theme is to use the candies that are most often associated with Easter and to use those candies to help tell the Easter story. There is a modified session available on Messy Church USA's website. It's actually available for free. It was written during COVID when a lot of people were at home for Easter. And so it was to use that extra messy, that extra Easter candy and how that leftover Easter candy could help tell the story. But this would be, and it absolutely is adaptable to expand it into a full messy Easter session in person, however you are doing Messy Church. You can add a few more activities. You can stretch it out to include all of the Easter story, Holy Week, and everything in between, or you can use it to concentrate on those kind of Easter Sunday and post-Easter stories as well. This one was particularly fun when we did some sweet, salty, sour, and hot tasting. So we had kind of sour, believe it or not, found some sour jelly beans and some spicy jelly beans. Didn't really know that that was a thing, but it's amazing what you can find these days. And we had a chance for folks to try the different parts or the different types of candy. And we used this to talk about the parts of the story, the Easter story, that were sweet, and the parts that were maybe sour or sad and salty or hot and angry. So the different types of candy gave us different talking points for that. Yes, we made Play-Doh from Peeps. The recipe is in that session online. It involved a lot of Peeps, some coconut oil, and a microwave. It was very messy, but it was actually a lot of fun. My volunteers have asked that I not do this one ever again, but in reality, it was one of our favorite activities. And while it sounds like it would end up being super sticky and kind of gross, it actually created a pretty cool Play-Doh. So who knows? There are all kinds of things that you can do with Peeps and hollow chocolate bunnies and jelly beans and whatnot. So this session was a lot of fun. It was a fun theme, a fun approach to Messy Easter. There are a ton of science experiments that are possible with candy, Easter candy. So this is a great session for getting some of the science involved. Here's one more session that is available from Messy Church USA. This one's a full session with 10 activities and a celebration time with script and activity signs and templates and all that kind of stuff. So ready to go. This one covers all of Holy Week, but it focuses in on the surprising aspects of the Easter story. So for a lot of people who have heard the story or think that they know the story, they may forget just how shocking parts of Holy Week were and how surprising it was for the women to show up at the tomb on Easter morning and find it empty. This involves thinking about what would be the breaking headlines of the day or the social media posts kind of following along with the events of Holy Week. It's got these awesome fizzing crosses you see in that picture that involves using baking soda and vinegar to create a really cool science effect, but also a great craft. So this is another way of approaching the story. Now, once you have your theme, you can begin to settle on your activities. So a few things to keep in mind. Think about our Messy Church values. We are to be about all ages. We are to be focused on creativity, and above all, we are to be Christ-centered. So choose a variety of activities. Consider having a prayer station, or consider having a station that might appeal more towards your adults or your older youth or older children. In addition to crafts or activities that are more approachable for our younger folks. Easter, I think, is particularly hard because a lot of the activities have a tendency to be geared towards little ones. So consider a variety and remember to include all ages. You may, if you are expecting a crowd or hoping for a crowd or publicize for a crowd in mind, you may need to add more activities than usual. This has definitely been true for us. Having more activities is more work on the front end, but the good news with more activities is that it actually helps your crowd be able to spread out a little bit more. So that's something to consider. You might want to add a few more than what you're used to. And I would say this, don't be distracted by cute bunnies. There are a lot of really cute Easter activities online, and all of them could be wonderful to do at home. But that's not what Messy Church is about. We are a worship service, and the activities are supposed to help us engage with stories of faith. So don't get distracted by these cute bunnies. Let's keep our activities Christ-centered. how did these activities help connect to the story? How do they help people connect with Jesus or understand who they are as a part of God's beloved? How do these activities work for our overall goal for Messy Church? So here we are. Once you've chosen your activities, you can begin to plan your celebration time, or maybe you've planned your celebration time and use that to help guide your activities. Either way is fine, but some things to consider with your celebration time. Again, thinking about Messy Church values of hospitality, creativity, and particularly remaining Christ-centered. It's a lot of story to tell, potentially, and there are a lot of options. We have 4 Gospels worth of Easter story and Holy Week things to tell. So centering your celebration time around kind of key pieces is important, and your theme can help you do that. Some other things to keep in mind. Pay attention to your language. If you have a lot of new people who have come maybe for just an egg hunt, they might not be familiar with the whole of the Easter story. We have a tendency to assume that everybody knows the story, but that's not really the case. So when you think about your language, watch your insider words, watch those kind of typical church words. How are you telling the story in a way that people who have never heard it at all can understand at least some of it? Okay, so consider your language. Another point related to this, Easter activities have a tendency to see this, especially with things like jelly bean prayers or bracelets with different kinds of beads. They have a tendency to use the black jelly bean or the black bead to represent sin. And they have a tendency to use the white bead to represent new life or the joy of Easter or something good. Be careful of that false dichotomy of black and white, where black is always bad and white is always good. Think about that and think about how you can use a different color to say the same thing. For example, a lot of jelly beans have maybe a purple jelly bean, so use it to talk about the bruises that Jesus had, as opposed to black being sin. Or you could talk about the black of how the sky turned dark when Jesus died. That black doesn't always have to represent sin. Be careful of your language. That's a hospitality factor. And it will be important, especially as we welcome new folks to our Messy churches. So a second thought about celebration. How can you use your activities or even your egg hunt as a starting point for how you tell a story? If you do an egg hunt as a part of your Messy Easter, could you consider hiding resurrection eggs along with your other eggs and let that be your starting point for telling your story? You'll find a script for this particular celebration in the Messy Easter Easter surprise session from Messy Church USA. Are there other activities, noisemakers, sets even that you could make during your activity time that you could then incorporate into your story time, into that celebration time? And then finally, what's the one piece of good news? What's that good news that you want people to hear? If they go away hearing nothing else from you at Messy Easter, what's the one thing you want them to hear? I had a preaching professor when I was at Duke who said every sermon that's preached ought to have at least one nugget of good news in it, and to make sure that it's there. And I think this applies to Messy Church and Messy Easter. If people hear nothing else, what is that good news that they should hear? Why does it matter to them? So keep that in mind as you are thinking about your celebration. Now, you've got to recruit some volunteers. And if you're expecting a big crowd for Messy Easter, you might need some extra volunteers. consider adding some greeters to your usual volunteer list. Have some greeters at the door, have them help people find their way to your messy church, or have them explain how messy church works to some of the new folks. I found that inviting people to serve as greeters for something like Messy Easter can actually be a really great way to get some of our folks involved with Messy Church who wouldn't necessarily sign up. Folks who might be a little bit intimidated by the arts and crafts, or by doing a game, or by interacting, just kind of the whole thing just overwhelms them, or maybe they think it's not for them because it involves children. Asking folks to be greeters for one Messy Church is usually enough to get folks excited. They come in, they experience the joy and the excitement of Messy Church and Messy Easter, and they are quick to sign up the next time around. So this might be a good way to get some folks in as a part of your Messy Church. You may need volunteers to help you with the egg hunt, so keep that in mind. And if you have more activities, that means you will need more table hosts. So some thoughts on publicity. It depends on what you want, y'all. At the end of the day, if you aren't gearing up for a big crowd for Messy Easter, that's 100% fine. Publicize this Messy Church the way that you would normally publicize any Messy Church that you do. But if you want this to be a kickoff event, for example, maybe this is your first Messy Church and you're kicking off with a Messy Easter, or if you really want to do kind of a big outreach push, then you might want to consider your publicity. Are there community websites that you can use? We have a website in Greenville called Kidding Around Greenville, and it's for families, just a great opportunity for families to kind of see what's going on in the upstate South Carolina community, and it's free to add our event to their list. And so we often will advertise our Messy Churches, and especially our kind of holidays like Messy Easter, on this website. You may want to create some extra flyers, or even do some paid ads on social media. Paid ads on social media can be very, very inexpensive, but it allows you to kind of target your audience, your outreach. So something to think about. Finally, to hunt eggs or not. Listen, there's no right or wrong choice on this. There's no go this way or not. I don't know. I don't really know what to tell you. Maybe you already have a tradition of hunting, of doing an Easter egg hunt sometime around Easter in your church. Maybe you have a great opportunity to take that egg hunt and elevate it to a Messy Church. Maybe if you are getting started as a Messy Church, this is a great kind of hook for your congregation to kind of jump on this Messy Church bandwagon. Take that Easter egg hunt and bump it up. That's awesome. We did something similar. We kind of took an Easter egg hunt that was already happening and combined it with some other stuff, and Messy Easter was born for us. And so we still do an egg hunt. Although there are years, as our Messy Church has grown, there are years where I've wondered, maybe we don't need the actual egg hunt. If you are not doing an egg hunt, the question is, why would you start doing one? And it's fine if you have a good reason for starting an egg hunt. Maybe you're using it to hide those resurrection eggs to tell the story, or maybe because it's a great way to get people to show up. Just know your why. Know why you're starting that egg hunt. Why do you need it? And again, the egg hunt might actually be a good publicity tool. We found that a lot of families are looking for an Easter egg hunt to take their children to, and this kind of gets us on people's radars. But with any Easter egg hunts, you've got to keep in mind, what are you going to do if it rains? Do you have a rain plan? Can you do this inside? If it's raining and you can't do your egg hunt, what does that do for the rest of your messy church or your messy Easter? So consider that kind of rain or shine, your rain plan when it comes to the egg hunt. And you also might want to consider, are there different levels for different ages? Do you have an easy area for the littles? Do you have a more difficult scavenger hunt type Easter egg hunt for the older kids or even for the adults? How can you incorporate not just the littlest folks in the Easter egg hunt, but can you kind of do multiple levels? And if you decide to do an Easter egg hunt, this is a great way to get your anchor church, your traditional congregation involved with Messy Church, because you can start asking them to bring in candy beforehand. Have them support your messy Easter by contributing to the Easter egg hunt through candy or other treats that you can give away. So these are some of my thoughts, my tips, my tricks, I guess, from several years of doing Messy Easter. As I said at the start, Messy Easter has become one of our biggest messy churches of the season. I'm not really sure why that is. I don't know whether it's because people are looking for an egg hunt or because Messy Church is like any other church where we have Christmas and Easter folks. I don't really know. But I do know that it's often one of the messiest and one of the craziest messy church sessions that we do. But with some planning and some good teamwork, it can be super successful. And it's been a real blessing for us. So I hope to see you at our live Q&A and kind of engage session. That is the second part of our webinar series. Bring your ideas for messy Easter, ideas for activities or celebration time. If you've done a messy Easter before, what's worked well in your setting, or what hasn't worked well? That's always helpful to know too. Or what ideas for themes do you have that you could bring and share as we consider what Messy Church and how Messy Church shares the Easter story. I do want to recommend, again, our Messy Easter book. You can find this wherever kind of large bookstores. It's pretty readily available, and it's got some great ideas in it. And again, there's several sessions on the Messy Church USA website and Get Messy magazine. So I hope to see you at the Engage session, and good luck with your Messy